As we've grown, we've become more opportunistic by being able to build the team, understanding what we need instead of trying to figure out the entire dynamics of how to do it.
Welcome to the Go Along Podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And guess what? I am your host, Billy Keels, and I am so looking forward to welcoming you back to today's conversation because it's another really, really awesome one. I promise this one is really, really off the charts. It's really cool. So anyway, I enjoy being here and sharing the conversations with you and things like that. And at the same time, I just want to make sure that for those of you who are continuing to download the conversations, you're continuing to share them, you're continuing to talk to them with your family and friends, it's phenomenal. Really appreciate that because we continue to move this wonderful little podcast up the charts, which is awesome. And a lot of you, as well as those of you that are taking the time to leave your honest written review and rating, like an honest one, like the things that you like and the things that you want to see changed, especially on the Apple Podcast platform. We've made a simple little video. Click the video if you're having some challenges, and it will walk you through exactly what you need to do. So we would really appreciate that. If you haven't done that already, it helps us to make sure that we continue to attract amazing guests that help you get the content and information that you want to move yourself forward. So, and do that faster. Also, for those of you that want to find all of the podcast episodes, and this may be changing sometime soon, depending on when you're listening to this. But for the moment, go to billykeels.com. When you get there, it's going to change the screen and stuff, and then you're going to see a podcast tab. Go to the podcast tab, and you can find every single conversation, video form, audio form. It's absolutely amazing. So just do that, billykeels.com. Give it a second. It's going to change the screen and then go to the podcast tab and it'll be absolutely phenomenal. Find everything you need, all the show notes, everything really, really simple for you. And there are a lot of you are also interested in finding out more about what we're doing with this amazing accredited investor club. It's really, really awesome. So we're getting started. It's grassroots and I can tell you all about it. All you need to do is send an email. It's super simple. Just send an email, aiclub@billykeels.com. I will respond to you personally when it gets to me. I will respond to you personally. We'll talk you through all the stuff that's happening. It's really cool. It's very grassroots. It's not like super massive, overly organized and stuff like that. We're getting to know one another and talk about the things that are really, really cool. One of the things that's really talking about right now is like massive taxes for people that are high wage earners. It's usually not fun. We got some pretty cool solutions there, and you get exclusive access if you're part of our accredited investor club. So aiclub@billykeels.com. Really looking forward to connecting with you there. And so listen, today's conversation is amazing. Really, really awesome. So this guy that we're going to talk to today, just done a lot of different things, finance background, got started in business in New York City. Connected, ended up meeting his girlfriend at the time, now is his wife. They built this amazing relationship together, amazing business together. They're impacting lives all over the place. Very much a long distance investor, loves living in one place, just recently moved to a new place and continue to build their business, continue to help others expand their and your ability to continue to invest in multifamily assets. It's amazing. This guy's got a great background. His name is Jason Yarusi, and we're going to have that conversation just after this. Are you looking for a way to get to long distance investing success, but not spending all the effort? You want to do it in a way that's much faster and it doesn't cause as much pain? Well, listen, I can save you all of that stress. Just go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes and you can pick up your free PDF to help you on your road to long distance investing success. So if you want to know how to create long distance investing success through a proven formula of having the right values, the right vision, and the ability to reposition underperforming assets, then guess what? Today's the conversation you're going to want to listen to until the very last word because, wow, today's guest, absolutely phenomenal, amazing. He had his professional start in New York City as the proprietor, get this, of a brewing company. I definitely want him to tell us more about that. He's also a VP of building movers and contractors. This is really important. He's a father of 3, an avid ultra runner, and he is a workout enthusiast, which is phenomenal. And get this, he's also an aspiring ukulele player. I want to hear more about that because that sounds awesome. So he also founded Yarusi Holdings with his wife, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Mr. Jason Yarusi. Jason, welcome to the show, man.
you for having me. Great intro. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate that. And you know what? I was like, I was like, oh my God, cool. Jason's coming on the show. I know everybody's going to learn so much from him. He's got a lot going on in similar places. I don't want to tell. I'm giving a little bit of a spoiler, a little teaser. That we've got some same geographies in common sometimes when I'm over in the US. But here's the thing. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to get 2 in the beginning. You're going to get 3 in the end. In the middle, Jason, you're going to get a lot of questions. I just don't know what those are. So the thing is, I'm ready for us to jump into today's conversation, as long as you're ready. But I'm going to guess
I'm ready.
I knew you're ready. So here's the thing. Help us understand, where do you live in the U.S.?
Sure. I live in a town. It's called Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It's about 20 minutes south of Nashville. We moved down here about 14, 15 months ago. Before that, my wife, she grew up and was raised in Hawaii. We met in New York City, and I grew up in New Jersey. So we lived in New York City about 14 years, let's say, pushed the narrative. And then on that front, moved back out to New Jersey about 2012, and then just decided that it was just time to make a change. So we moved down to Murfreesboro about 14, 15 months ago, and it's been no looking back.
All right, man. Fantastic. And I know we're going to jump into that a little bit more as you tell your backstory. But second question, or question number 2, I guess, what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
You know, you wake up and then your kids wake up and they smile at you, right? I have 3 little kids, 7, 5, and 3. And that can get you going each and every day. You don't need to look any further than that, right? And so when you set that with the right intention of just saying like, man, how blessed am I? Healthy, happy kids. And what else do I need?
Hey, mics dropped. See you guys later. That was amazing. Unbelievable, Jason. Now, listen, that is such a positive thing. And I love the simplicity in it, because it really is recognizing that you have happy, healthy children and you're in a position just to be able to greet them every single morning. So that's phenomenal, man. Appreciate you sharing that. And the other thing is, Jason, so I try to do this kind of thing that my entire Going Long family, like in every conversation, they forgive me. I'm hoping that you will forgive me as well, because I tried to tell your backstory in like 2.5 seconds. You have impacted way too many lives, done way too many things to tell your story in 2.5 seconds. So first of all, if you could forgive me for trying to do that. Secondly, if you could really kind of help me out by telling your own backstory in your own words. And thirdly, really to help the Going Long family is, as you're telling the story, Jason, can you talk about some of the major decisions that you've made along the way to get to this point in your journey? And then we'll see where the conversation goes from there.
Sure. So I'll recap. I think it really takes tail when I first met my wife back in 2003. But before that, I went to school, got a finance degree, and just decided at that time that I just wasn't going to use it. Right. So got out of school, went into the arts, actually lived in Europe for a few years, and found myself back in New York City about 2003. And lo and behold, had a friend that I had met while in Europe, and just so happens he lived in New York City. He said, "Hey, I got this great job. It's a bar that's open in the summer, but they need some construction help. Why don't you just come out here and see if you can get a job?" So I walk onto this really dingy old pier that now I see this little Hawaiian girl, lo and behold, Keely, who eventually looks at me, probably 10 years later to become my wife. But in that front, we meet for the first time, and I get a construction job. And so that's my first step into it. And then the next step, I start bartending at this role. And then in the middle of that, Keely chases some dreams, moves out to California. So she's out there for a few years, and I end up running this bar, and this bar pretty much explodes. It's a little dingy bar behind a place called Basketball City that gets a couple 100 people out there for all these crazy night parties. And we transformed this bar from really where it was to 25 times the revenue in a couple of years, becomes the biggest New York City outside bar. We sold the most Corona beer in 3 months, in really like almost 3 years in a row, more than the rest of the world sold in the whole year. And so the bar we would have like 20,000 people. So we saw this evolution of growth that happened in this bar, and Peely ends up moving back. And at that time, we both ended up becoming a couple. And it was this point where we were already knowing how to work together, and we had to learn how to be a couple. Right. And that's usually that point, is we get that question a lot. Is like, how do you guys work together? Well, we always work together. Then you learn how to be a couple, right? And that can be the easy part or the hard part, right? Just depending where you are. Yeah. At that same time, we're right in the cusp of 2011, 2012, Hurricane Sandy happens. My dad has always had this business, lifting and moving houses. And so actually taking the physical house off its foundation and either moving it, whether it be for setback reasons, subdivision reasons, foundation problems, or most notably for flooding. Well, he had this business in New Jersey where he was doing 12, 13 projects a year, right? Just consistently, that's what it was. Well, Hurricane Sandy comes in. It's a hurricane that decimates the East Coast. We're talking hundreds of thousands of homeowners and homes ravished, wrecked, these homeowners displaced. Well, his business overnight goes from those 12 jobs a year, let's say one a month, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls, right? So my brother, who was working for me at the time, a bit younger than me, Keely and myself, we move out to New Jersey. We said, let's go help Dad, right? And so that was a pivot, right? I was having a good track at that time, still running this very successful bar. I had opened another restaurant in New York City. I had opened a brewery that I eventually sold, just looking at really just some of the opportunities that existed, right? And so at that time, we were, I think, the first New York City brewery to get licensed in a couple of decades. So it was a cool little walk-in, but a great learning lesson, right? But I made the choice that, Dad needed help. Let's go help Dad. Yeah. So we got out there, and one of the things that constantly popped up is that in the service business, right, there is no paid time off, right? You're working to get, right? That's what it is. So if you don't show up as a bartender, it's not like you're just, people are just sending you tips home, it's that same thing with construction, right? If you're not doing getting. So we started helping Dad, and it was great, right? We went from doing those 12, 13 jobs a year to at one point we did over 300, 350 lifts in a year. And these are actually houses where, my family was going in and in one day taking the house and lifting it. And so we helped couple thousand homeowners, get back into their home, hopefully prevent any future flooding, cut down their insurance rates, all these things that were beneficial. But at the same time, Keely was pregnant with our first child, and we just knew that we wanted to get our time back, right? We always want to control our time. So I can sit here talking to you when I choose to, instead of having the narrative set forth with what I need to be done. Yeah. And so we started looking at what else is there available. Because even in the brewery world, owning a restaurant, all these things, we were putting ourselves in a position where we had to take action for things to happen. But what I found with that large bar is that at one point that we had 250, 300 employees, I was able to empower others so they could be in their best position to succeed. And when they feel empowered, they would go out there and put that extra effort in, right? Because they weren't being told to do it. How can we all make this better together? Mm-hmm. And we looked at, what else is there out there? And we found real estate. And that was our first step. Well, this was an eye opener. However, we did what we thought was logical at the time, and one of the points here was that sometimes the action is what you need, because the action serves to show you what's not right, which is just as important of finding what is right. But typically you can't just find what's right by just waiting to act. And so we acted, and Keely, at the time, she's pregnant, right? Getting her real estate license. We started flipping homes, doing wholesales, buying some short-term rentals. So we were doing all these things that, again, takes our activity, right? So here we are, very active in the construction business, having to go forth now. Now we're doing all this compounding of basically all these flips. And we were doing complicated flips because we're actually lifting homes and adding stories. We were doing a bunch of things that we're on. And we found that we were going further away. We want our time back, and here we are, and our time's going away from us. Mm-hmm. And it took Keely going to a RIA meeting where she meets a person doing out-of-state rentals. And that was an aha moment. And she said, well, I met this guy, he's doing out-of-state rentals and they're doing turnkey. And I said, well, the advantage is for us to look at where we could really force the value. So we went back to them, helped them find us leads, and we ended up buying 2 units and 3 units because we just knew that having the ability to do multiples would give us more bandwidth to be able to succeed. So we did that. And again, we get back to this philosophy is we were able to put teams together out of state, 1,000 miles away, that could start to fix these properties. And lo and behold, without our actual effort, no hammers picked up, nothing active on our side, checks start showing up, right? Because we put together a process. But again, that process was capped, right? There was only going to be so many small properties we could have in one area where there was going to be that piece of economies of scale missing. So it hit me that large apartment investing is an opportunity where we could get back to our roots of seeing a large business that was underperforming, like a restaurant, like anything else, where you had the way to scale, but it was typically being limited, whether it was on the owner or the property. And that was that aha moment that I said, well, what if we went for this? Right. And that was our conversation where Keely is a little more risk adverse. So we were having this conversation of is it safer to do small? And when we laid down the steps of why it made more sense to go after bigger assets, right? Like the safety component, the diversity component, the appreciation, the upside, the more renters to pay, the better leverage options. Well, it made complete sense. So we dove all in, surrounded ourselves with like-minded people, see and really looked how are other people doing this successfully, sold off our smaller 2 and 3 units, just went fully in, moved markets not far, still stayed out in the Midwest, and went from the 3 unit to buying a 94 unit. And that was about 5 years ago here. And that's now really transpired in us to buying somewhere around, I guess, 1,400 units, about 160 million in real estate since then.
So can you break that down, just because I think what is really, really interesting, and we're going to go back and break down some of the different patterns, because I think this is really important for the Going Long family to really understand what you're saying. But if I understood you correctly, right around 2012, right after you went back to help dad, is that when you started investing in the smaller properties? Is that the same time?
Honestly, about 2013, 14, really probably even 2014. We started educating ourselves. We started, and which was a bonus, right? Because it got us familiar with the terms, but it also parlayed us taking action, right? Because real estate's a wonderful space, but you could, just name a thing you can do real estate, right? You want to do tax liens, you want to do wholesaling, you want to do flipping, you want to do long-term flipping, you want to do turnkey, you want to do multifamily, right? So we had, it took us the experience to just choose a space and go. That got us out of the gate. And I think 2014 was our first transaction.
Okay. So 2014 was your first transaction. You're chugging along. You recognize this is something you want to do. You get started, you get the duplex, you get the triplex, and you're kind of moving along. You recognize that, hey, you can only do this to a certain point. Then you're realizing like, okay, well, we could actually go back like we did with the really big restaurant. We can get something bigger and be able to actually build a business. And so you start to sell off those assets. But it sounded to me like there was, over the last probably 24 months, that there was relatively exponential growth compared to what you had been doing from maybe like 2014 up until 2019, something like that. Would that be fair to say, Jason?
Well, exactly. And if you get back to the restaurant, right, the restaurant had gone at a certain point of revenue for a certain point until you figured out that you could scale this, right? So the bar was 12 by 12. So how are you going to have 20,000 people come be serviced by a 12 by 12 bar? So looking at ways that you could automate the function, mass scale it, right? So you wouldn't run out of supply, right? You have to sell 4,000 Corona, basically 4,000 cases of Corona in a day. Like, how are you going to get this? Like, how are you going to keep the inventory, right? So understanding that, okay, you can scale this business, because again, where typically things fail is that the owner or the person in charge is trying to do it all or putting themselves in a position where they're not empowering others, right? So the business can only go as far as that person, right? There's 24 hours in the day, there's one of me. And not to lie, that first building, the 94 unit, we did it all, Peely and I, right? Yeah. So we found the market. We found the opportunity, we underwrote the deal, we put together the team, the property manager, we raised the capital, we got the deal closed, we basically everything, right? And so that front, we did all the roles. However, the reason we were able to be successful with that is because we were able to find the right partners that could handle out the day-to-day.
Okay.
That only goes far, right? Because
sorry, Jason, I'm just going to interrupt you here, because what you just said is actually platinum. Sorry, I say platino. Sometimes gets mixed up with languages. What you said, because there's a lot of people, maybe they're not avid ultra runners, but they're very busy people, and they probably didn't hear what you just said. And I want you to make sure that they understand what you realized was one of the ways to help you scale efficiently. Could you please repeat that last part again?
Sure. Well, think of anything you're doing right now. And think on, it's almost like, let's get back to balancing, right? If you have 20 things that you need to balance every day, we sometimes put the narrative that they're all important. However, you think about it is because just our mind is in that motion, and that's just our daily routine. And we've gotten in such a routine that we're not thinking back to what's actually happening. But a lot of these things, if you just didn't do them, really not much would happen. Right? Not much would happen, right? If you didn't check the box on something, the world wouldn't end. But if you don't pick your kids up from school, right? Or you don't do something like that, like that's something you have to do, or, so the same thing goes with yourself in business, is that there's things that you're doing that ultimately you're not the best at. And even if you are, someone doing it 80% or 70% is going to get the job done more, so you can go focus on the higher earning things, right? So if you're looking at yourself and, maybe you're worth a lot of money per your hour. And if you're spending yourself on $10, $15 tasks that could be accomplished, and that's not to talk down on someone else. This is their superpower, and you could put them in a great role, and you're basically taking a role away from them. And your upside is being limited by not giving other people the opportunity to help you, which ultimately helps themselves, which ultimately helps the entire plan, the process. And so if you want to help more people, if you want to go out there and provide more value, it can't be limited with just us, right? There's no, there's no Elon Musk without who's been built around him. There's no Steve Jobs without who's been built around him. They're the leader, they're the driver, they're the vision, right? But there has to be people to fill those roles. And if they were to be people that just said, well, I'm just going to do it all, right? Then we wouldn't have them as success stories. But the same thing goes in us in our success worlds, right? We're meant to do big things. And if we want to do big things, well, how are we going to do big things if we're doing everything?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't run, walk, talk, eat all at the same time. We have to do one at a time and let the other pieces fill in the gap.
Absolutely love that. And yes, the other pieces fill in the gap, and be the focus on the thing that you can drive the most value in and actually helps to expand and grow the teams. And sometimes that's difficult. I even put my own hand up. As a recovering perfectionist, and even had a lot of success in the corporate world and doing that through teams, there's this tendency to say, hey, look, nobody can do it better than me. And so you start doing it and you're like, yeah, but do they actually need to do it as well as you? Like, probably not.
That's
and they're probably much better at it than you are. So
but that's the biggest question is when you can identify with yourself, do they need to do it as good as me? Right. And when you can answer that question, I mean, it logically just says, well, no, it doesn't matter. Right. And so if we can fill that gap, then great. Then let's go do bigger things.
Wow. Don't you just love this conversation? This is amazing. This is fantastic. And so just really quickly, I just wanted to remind you, for those of you that are looking to create more options for yourself, get there faster, and do that with long distance investing, make sure that you go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid, so that you can avoid all those mistakes, get to your goals faster and sooner. Once again, that's billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. Now back to the conversation. So here's the thing. So speaking of doing bigger things and doing them together, doing them as a team, one of the things that you mentioned in the very beginning is that, like, you decided to go towards real estate, you and your wife, right? And so, but at the same time, you were business owners. You mentioned that you decided to go there. I'm always curious as to two things. I'm actually just going to give you both of these questions at the same time. Number one, what was it about real estate? Because you were evaluating other things, and you mentioned that, yes, you decided to go down that route and you started taking action immediately, which was great. But I always like to get people, because there's a lot of other busy professionals that are here, and they're going through lots of other options and choices and stuff like that. Number one, what was it about real estate that attracted the two of you? And then I happen to know, if my research is correct, that your companies have invested in over 7 different geographic locations, right? And so that's something that is completely contrarian, right? Because one of the things, Jason, I don't know about you, but when I started getting involved in real estate, the books that I was reading initially when I started talking to people, you want to be a great landlord, you want to be here, you want to live there. And it's not to say that you cannot build a business that way, but I'm a guy who lives in Barcelona, Spain. Yeah, I'm from Columbus, Ohio, but I've built real assets from Europe in the United States. So help us understand, because that's super contrarian. And I'd love for you to talk to us about what moved you towards real estate, and then to go completely contrarian and decide, like, okay, we started here, but now we're going to go into different locations where we're not even living anymore.
I'm usually a quick actor when something pops up, right? And so you get the reticular activator when, like, if you want to buy a car and you want to buy a blue Chevy, all of a sudden it's right in front of you, right? And so real estate kept coming in front of us, and it just kept being on my mind. And I just said, this is something to look at. And then come upon some sites where there's podcasts and other points. And then I'm driving around a lot, sourcing out jobs for the business, right? For lifting houses, just going, quoting jobs. And so I just had real estate on my mind all the time. So it wasn't so much of why, it was why not, right?
Gotcha.
And then the reasons lie that sometimes why is so much more powerful than everything else that can carry you forward, right? And so when we speak to geography, I am wholeheartedly in the position that you need to start in one market. And so our first, like in New Jersey being our first market, really the flipping and wholesaling, we had some short-term rentals, but our first long-term market for the larger assets was Louisville, Kentucky. And I did 5 assets there. So we brought a 94 unit, 65 unit, 48, 32, 58, right? So we brought a number of properties there because we were all in, and that allowed us to act quicker because I invested in 75 to 150 units was our goal, BC assets built between 1970 and 2005 in the Southeast and South submarkets of Louisville. So we were very dialed in. I could talk to you about all the growth, all the competition growth. But as we expanded there, we started opening up because you either can go deep when opportunities are in part, then you have to go wider if you have a system down. Where I find the failure goes, even with our mastermind, the 730 multifamily, they try and do too many places at once without a system in place. And so you're trying to be anywhere and everywhere in a shotgun approach, but you don't understand the market. You have no team in place. You have no avatar property. So you're taking away your reticular activator, helping you locate it. And you're also not empowering other people to help you find that because you're anywhere but anywhere. Right. Yeah. And so when we honed in there, we started moving really, a lot of ours now carry through into the Nashville MSA and then also the Atlanta MSA. But we've been able to walk into opportunistic opportunities in a few other markets. Right. So, we started really focusing on development last year, found ourselves into a development in Salisbury, Maryland, Emmaus, PA. I went to school in Eastern PA, knew the asset really well, came upon us, dialed into that one. Little Rock, Arkansas, had a great relationship with a banker who knew of this opportunity. It wasn't being marketed well. And so, for instance, it was being marketed as if it was a single family house on those platforms. So, of course, the buyer pool wasn't there because it was a residential agent going there. So as we've grown, we've become more opportunistic by being able to build the team, understanding what we need instead of trying to figure out the entire dynamics of how to do it.
You're not trying to boil the ocean. You actually figure out what you're good at, where your strengths are, and you're playing to those strengths. So through the stories that you just told, it was clear that relationships were important when you went to Arkansas. You had your own personal experience when you were in Maryland, and you had relationships with bankers in other places. And you were very crystal clear when you were going into Kentucky, into Louisville, into the submarkets. So what I would love for the Going Long family to recognize is the beauty of what you're saying, Jason, is once you are absolutely crystal clear, or maybe just clear, maybe it's not crystal clear, but if you're crystal clear, it's even better. But when you're clear, it's really just a matter of bringing in the pieces that you're missing and executing, because then you can rinse and repeat. Like you said, you were in Kentucky and you went there. And then once you went there, you went deep. You didn't just do one time, you went 5 times. Why? Because you probably already built the team, because you already had the location, you started getting insider information, positive thing in real estate, right? And so I'm just curious, because those are the things that I'm picking up on, if there's anything that you want to build on top of that, because I think those are important points for the Going Long family to take into consideration.
Well, I can hear the narrative from listeners, but if I get that dialed in, then I'm going to miss an opportunities. The contrary to that, Jocko Willink says discipline is freedom, right? When you're disciplined to an approach, you can recognize it, right? Yep. So if I said right now, let's go to Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm going to give you a building for $2 million and a building for $50 million, and the $2 million is 100 units and the $50 million building is 100 units. What's the better deal, right? Some people may say it's the cheaper one, but that might be a horrible deal in a poor area that's never going to have appreciation. Is going to be the worst opportunity ever because you have no idea about the market you're afforded, right? Well, that's what happens here, is that when you're everywhere, you don't have a dialed-in approach. So one, there's going to be people that are going to be quicker to act because they know it better. They're going to have a team in place, so they're going to have more certainty. They're going to have a system built so they can operate on it, and they're going to beat you to the deal. It's going to happen every time because you don't have the bandwidth nor the time, especially in today's market, to be able to dial yourself into those opportunities.
Yeah. And it's also, you're highlighting one of the other things. It's about being able to move quickly and move with those that have knowledge, part of your group, part of your tribe, part of your family, whatever the case may be. You're not moving alone. You're not trying to recreate the wheel every single time, which is one of the things I absolutely love that you are talking about. Now, one of the things that you could help us understand, right? I broke down some of the different ways that you're entering to new markets. And I'm sure it probably was very different when you were getting started than where you are today. So maybe you could talk to us about the person, like, you know what, I'm a really busy professional, Jason. You've just given me this different ways and different markets or locations that you're in. And, how do I get, you have this great clarity, but how can I get started? What do you tell those busy professionals that know there's something else out there, but they just don't know how to get started?
I've heard it put very well, is that we're either one of all four things and sometimes multiple. We either have time, we either have money, we either have credit, or we have knowledge, right? Yep. What gap can you fill and what pieces can you fill? Because then you need the other partners, right? In multifamily, it's a team sport. There's someone to find a deal. There's someone to do the due diligence, someone to do the underwriting, someone to be the sponsor or the loan guarantor for the project, the one who raises money or has the money, the one who now does the asset management, which actually just manages the team doing the work, the property management, right? So there's all these pieces. You can do a lot of these roles from not being there locally, not being there at all, right? Our team is not in Decatur, Georgia right now, but we have assets there, right? Our team is not in Little Rock, Arkansas, but we have assets there, right? So you can do these roles, but where can you have your best superpower, right? Where can you help the team and help others where they may be lapsing, right? So understanding what you need, right? So if you have a great job right now, maybe you have the balance sheet, maybe you have money, but you don't have time. Well, there's other people out there that have the time, have the knowledge because they put in the work here and are limited on capital. So how can you find people with similar goals, right? Have similar goals of what they want to do, how they want to make improvements, how they want to have an investment strategy, but lack on the resources that you provide.
Fantastic. I love the way that you break that down, really recognizing what is it that you have. Do you have the knowledge, the money, the time, the credit, being able to figure out how you can add your superpower to the team sport of multifamily investing, because as you said, it's a very different game. You don't win this game by yourself. So I love that breakdown. One of the other things that's pretty close to my heart that you mentioned earlier, and I know a lot of times maybe there are people that they're already investing. Now they really want to start taking it to the next location, and they're working with their spouse. I tried this for a while. And it was a challenge for us, right? And when you were talking about you and Pili, that you both met at the workplace, I'll say, and my wife and I met at the workplace as well. And there are a lot of times that you can figure out how to make the relationship work and the working relationship work. That works for some people. It doesn't work for some. What have been some of the keys to successfully working with your wife? And your business? Maybe you can talk to us about some of the things that actually worked, because it sounds like you've had a very, very positive experience. And I know there are things that you all are even doing to help other people go down that path. Yeah,
we get this question a lot, right? When we're out speaking or when we're on calls, is that, in my significant other is not on board. And I'll talk more to how it's not working and why it can work. Is that typically when we're doing something, we put ourselves in a position like we're the knight in shining armor. We're doing all this great thing to help and all the point. I'm doing this real estate to help our future and help, our legacy and help everything here that's going to create this better future for us. But if you don't have an open line of communication to make sure that the partner is on, is basically on the same narrative with you, right? You could be working 23 hours a day and just thinking you're doing the best job, but maybe all they want is for you to sit down at dinner with the family, right? Because you're missing this point because you haven't asked the question. And many times the gap is just a lack of communication. You find the same thing with partnerships too. Where do partnerships fail? Well, there's a lack of asking seemingly difficult questions in the beginning of what do each of us wants, right? But in the long run, those are easy questions because usually there can become tension or other points because even if both think they're doing a good job, maybe it's not in alignment of what is actually being done by both parties. So Pili and I I call it a luxury, but we worked together first. So we understood that narrative here. Yeah. So becoming the relationship was a new piece. And what we've now just tried to really focus on setting the parameters is that, we take our kids to school, we pick our kids up to school, we go to all their events, right? So those are in our day. Yeah. Right. The time that we set apart here. Now, the piece that we're always working back into is just finding time for Pili and I. Right. So, that's always the piece. And it's just even now moving here, we had a great nanny. She's awesome. But she had to go overseas. She's, doing an awesome thing going overseas for work for a few months. We knew that was coming. But in that front, just finding that trust vehicle where we have the time. Now, is that the worst thing in the world? No. But again, like you have to have time set aside for you two too, so you both can continue to grow, right? So understanding what are the needs of each other, because most of the time it's just simply we haven't asked a question. We're not slowing down to ask a question to make sure everybody's on the same plane.
And I love the way that you break that down. It's not asking the question. I'm just curious because I know you work with lots of people. Do you find that typically the questions aren't asked because, number one, we didn't know to ask, or the reality is I'm afraid of the response that I may get when I ask the question? What have you found is the...
hope is a thing that we all have that usually parlays us from where we want to go, right? So the question is that you will afford to not ask the question if you don't think you're going to like the answer, right? Mm-hmm. But most of the time, the biggest piece is asking the question actually creates more clarity, which creates a better circumstance, even if it's not the answer we want, right? Because we've all gotten an answer that we don't want. But when you look back on it, it's the best thing that ever happened, right? And that's the hardest thing. We never want to fail. We never want to be put in a position where someone tells us no. Yeah. And so we'll try every which way to avoid that, especially with someone that is close to us. But again, is the working relationship right for every friendship, partnership? No, because sometimes you become a partner or you're friends because you're like-minded, right? So if you have two people that are good at the same thing, they're both good at marketing and now you're partners, well, now you've just comboed the problem of what you're missing, right? So just understanding that you don't have to work together. You just have to have an understanding of how this fits within your life together.
Yeah, I love that. Keeping it simple. Also recognizing if you have two visionaries or you have two implementers or vice versa, especially when you have your smaller businesses, it's really important to understand that. And I guess one of the things I learned in the corporate world, especially because we're doing a lot of highly intense negotiations and things like that, it's usually the questions that you always have like in the pit of your stomach that you should ask. Yeah. Even if it's in a negotiation, and this is kind of just keeping things open, it's ask the question. Because if you assume something and then you get to the point that you kind of need to move the relationship forward or you need to get a signature on the line, and then those things they're going to come up anyway. So it's just better to get them out early, and then you can at least deal with them and you figure out if it works or if it doesn't work, but you're dealing with it in advance. So
100%.
Yeah. So listen, before we go along final three, I would love to, because I know you're impacting loads of lives and you've got a lot going on at Yarusi Holdings. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you are today, or you're building your community, you're continuing to impact lives and things like that.
Sure. So we're constantly building our team, right? And just like we had here is that there's two parts, right? There's you carrying and wearing too many hats, too many parts. But as you bring on team members, as you're scaling a business, you have to understand that your team will get to that point too. And so recognizing that so you can empower them to their best positions. So we're in a growth stage here at Yarusi Holdings, bringing on employees. As we continue to grow, we're constantly looking to source one deal per quarter, and that's carried very well for us. We've now started 7-figure multifamily, which is a mastermind where we help other businesses do the same thing, scale up, change their life, go from, working a different job into this point, go from single family into buying large multifamily. And we have over 50 businesses in the mastermind. And that's just been tremendous, right? You're seeing these people take action because they now have a tried and true process that they can go and say, okay, this can be done, right? The Rogers Bannister, the 4-minute mile. Someone else has done it. Here's the plan. Okay, I can do it too, right? Yeah. And when you get that done, you get that in process. I mean, that's the most rewarding thing you can see right there.
Fantastic. So that's really, really awesome. Love that you continuing to build out your team, continuing to build out also your mastermind, 7-figure multifamily. Talk a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes, but we kind of got to get to the going long final three, Jason. And the thing is, I never ask any of my amazing guests, and today you're my amazing guest, or our amazing guest, I should say, unless you tell me you're ready. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
I knew you would be. You're an ultra runner, for goodness sakes. Of course you're ready, man. Here we go. So, we started with kind of you over in Tennessee, and I'd like to bring it back. And even though I'm from Ohio, I'd like to bring it back to Europe. And since you've been over here, it sounds like you had a pretty positive experience. I would love for you to share with the Going Long family, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or still on your bucket list to visit? Yeah,
it's great. So honestly, it would probably be time of year, right? And it always comes down there. So I loved Hamburg and Hamburg, Germany in the summer. Honestly, around Christmas time, I had a great experience being in Copenhagen in Denmark. And so it really just comes down to time, right? Because I don't think there's ever a wrong answer, because if you go there for an experience, you can always find greatness.
So here's the thing. So you and I know what time of the year it is. We can timestamp it or not. But if you're going to say between Hamburg or Copenhagen now, where would you go?
Oh, we're right. Let's say I have more friends in Hamburg right now I haven't seen in a lot of time. So I'm going to say no. I have a friend in there that I haven't seen in probably a decade, maybe more.
Right.
And that would be cool to see them.
All right, fantastic. So today, your place is Hamburg, Germany. Appreciate that. The other thing, Jason, one of the things that I've recognized, and this is really about the good fortune I've had to see a lot of people and come into contact with a lot of people that are successful, and I would definitely consider you to be someone who is very successful, impacting lots and lots of lives, is really, hopefully you also would agree with me that one of the reason that people are really, really successful is because those people that are successful, unlike most people, they really look at creating a strong plan. They execute the plan. They get everything right the first time, which then allows them to continue to. I get all nervous and stuff. No, it's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's just kind of a joke. It's a joke. It's an inside joke with me and the Going Long family. They're probably laughing as they're running on the treadmill or whatever the case may be. And you guys can see Jason because he's kind of laughing here. He was like, "Oh my God, Billy, did you do that?" No, so it's a joke, right? Because the thing is, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody. And the reality is, Jason, those people that are successful, they actually make a whole lot more mistakes than most people, like a whole lot more mistakes. I don't know if it's 20 or 50 times more, but this is no joke. This is true. The one thing that I have noticed is every single time that someone who's successful, that they make a mistake that is a relevant mistake, without a doubt, every single time they stop. They understand what happened. They then start to take and put into place different strategies, tactics, and actions to minimize the probability of that exact same mistake happening. So you're a successful person. You've done 50 times more mistakes than most people. I don't want you really to think about the mistake or the learning opportunity or however you want to call it. I really want you to share with us, Jason, what is the one lesson that you took away from that learning opportunity that you know that the Going Long family needs to hear today?
Typically when we're thinking about mistakes, our mind is just ingrained to go to the worst possible thing that can happen, right? It's always, if I try this out, something's going to happen. The building's going to burn down. I'm going to be all over the news. They're going to come take my dog, right? It's like the worst case scenario of everything that can happen here. And we never give attention that, okay, if you're going to allow that the 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 can happen here, well, why can't you also allow that the 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of the greatest possible thing can happen too? And when you set the narrative that there's always two sides to the coin and we're not stuck in a point of worst, and just change our mindset to just, why not me? How can I change your wording, change your mindset to push yourself forward? You'll find that the opportunities they want, like the world wants you to succeed. It's not that the world doesn't, right? In our minds, we have to get past our mind each day. But when we allow to get past our mind, we understand that there is opportunity right in front of us in every different direction. Turn whatever way you want. There's opportunity here. And it's slowly waiting for you to take the action that you deserve.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely love it. So, keep your mind open, look for the positive, and continue to take action. So, love that, Jason. Appreciate it. And then, lastly, which is really also about helping to fill our minds with knowledge. And before we go, what is the one book that you would recommend to the Going Long family today?
It's always just the last book I'm picking up right now. So I'm picking up Gary V's. I think it's like 12 and a half, right? And so just a lot of points he's talking about. It's been great. It's always good. My little 7-year-old, he's been reading some of the chapters here, no points, but always the last book you pick up, right? There's always something to take away. Even if you don't like the book, there's always a piece. And like, even like when you go out into meetings and stuff or to, conferences, like there's always one thing to take away, right? Yeah. And if you can go somewhere with one thing to take away, wow, that's valuable.
Love it. 12 and a half, Gary Vaynerchuk, which is fantastic. And yeah, it's the last book you read, and look to take that one thing away. Man, you know what, Jason, I'm thinking about you in finishing your finance degree in 2003. And then you were going through things and you ended up, and heading into the city. And little did you know when you're working at this bar in New York City, you're going to meet your future wife, the mother of your 3 children. And that was going to be fantastic. She decided she needed to go back to the West Coast. She then came back. You all started continuing to work together. So you understood how that happened. And then you moved forward and you crystallized the relationship, and you realized, well, hang on, you know what? We knew how to work together, and now we can build this relationship together. And even though you were deciding that it was time to help Dad, because there was this major thing that happened on the East Coast, accelerated the growth of his business, you decided it was the time to get back and help. And raise over 2,000 different homes in the process. And by the way, they've got an amazing website, and Jason's talking about all that kind of stuff in one of the websites, which is phenomenal. But then you started recognizing patterns. You wanted to get started. You started you and Pili in real estate, and you recognized it was the smaller, the duplexes, the triplexes. And then at a certain point you realized, hey, listen, how do we continue to build this and make it bigger in the same way that you had done with your restaurant businesses and being able to build a business and have, multiple hundreds of employees and building that, optimizing, scaling at capacity. You continue to replicate that over and over and over. And you've demonstrated to us how you found multiple different ways to go to different locations by different means and being able to go deeper in each of one of those different areas. And now today, not only is Yarusi Holdings continuing to grow in terms of the team, you're also helping other people with a 7-figure multifamily mastermind. And I know just the wonderful, amazing energy, expertise, knowledge, know-how that you have. I'm looking forward to continue to stay in touch with you. And I know the entire Going Long family is like, how can I find out more about Jason, what they're doing? Maybe his wife, Pili, she's doing stuff. Help us understand. What's the best way to get in touch with you and find out more about how we can get involved in what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on all social channels at Jason Yarusi, Yarusi, or go to, if you want to learn more about investment business, yarusiholdings.com. You can find everything about 7-figure multifamily there, everything about, of course, our podcast, Multifamily Live, and the event we have coming up in Nashville in June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
All right, fantastic. So check him out, Jason Yarusi. You can find him on all social media. You go to yarusiholdings.com. And also, we're going to include that in the show notes, so you don't actually need to write any of it down. Just click it. And depending on when you're listening to this, we'll also include the link to your live event as well. So listen, Jason, man, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for deciding to invest your time with me and the entire Going Long family today, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, cool. If you give me just like literally 15 seconds, wrap things up. Listen, Going Long family was awesome. Jason gave you seriously so many really actionable items that you can put into place today. He's also giving you ways that you can learn about more of what they're doing at Yarusi Holdings. He's got a multifamily mastermind. He's got a live event that's coming up. Listen, we're going to make it really, really easy. So continue to take action. Continue to share today's conversation with your family, with your friends, and you all talk about the things that you learned today, which is absolutely phenomenal. And so in the meantime, I'm really going to be looking forward to welcoming you back on the very next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Wow, don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long-distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.